Valerie Plain Wilson, Paul Krugman, and Russell Simmons. But first, a panel on ethics in book reviewing includes Christopher Hitchens, Francine Prose, and Sam Tenenhouse. This is about 90 minutes.
Thanks, John. This started out because I did a survey years ago in 1988 on the ethics of book reviewing, and at the time when I wrote a note to the audience and to our membership, I wrote, to the respondent who accused the survey's drafter of being an idiot, I say, you're right, but not for the reason you think. I plan to leave future surveys to large institutions with career bureaucrats and charming duck ponds. Well, I forgot that plan, never to do a survey again, and when we started talking this year about changes in the business and the development of the blogosphere and all of that, we all thought at NBCC that it was time to ask some questions again. In order, we hoped to have comparative data, we decided to ask about 10 or 12 questions that we had asked back in 1988. Unfortunately, since we're not statisticians or social scientists and we're book critics, we blew it. We included an other category we didn't have before, so things don't quite line up. But as far as I'm concerned, all of this is just an extended anecdote, and the numbers are fun, but the real idea is to get us thinking about issues. What I want to do, since we do have quite a crowd, and we're hoping to go to 1 o'clock, at least some of us, if the energy is in the room, but we'll break briefly at 12:30 so everybody can go where they need to go, because the advertisement was for 12:30. I thought the most effective way to do this is to first start with a little bit of performance art. Instead of my introducing everybody, I'll have everyone introduce himself or herself as if they were writing a good critical ID for a review, e.g., Christopher Hitchens is the future author of God is Still Not Great, or something like that. And then I will take a couple of minutes just to toss the questions in the air. I'm not going to give you results because that would eat up too much time, but I think I'd like the questions in the air. I'm then going to ask everybody on the panel to talk for about 5 minutes toward this subject, individual questions or whether the whole thing is a bunch of malarkey and we shouldn't worry about ethics in book reviewing, and then we'll open it up to conversation. So I'd like to start just by having the panel introduce itself. Chris, can you begin?
Hitchens here. I write books for the Atlantic Monthly.
I'm Francine Prose. I'm a novelist and sometime book reviewer.
John Leonard. I write a new books column every month for Harper's and longer reviews for the New York Review of Books and The Nation.
I'm David Ulan. I'm the book editor of the Los Angeles Times. I write for the paper. Before that, I was a freelance reviewer for 20 years. God save me.
I'm Sam Tannenhouse. I'm the editor of the New York Times Book Review.
So hardly any editing needed. 5 objective introductions. So we had a 32-question survey. Just so you have a little bit of numbers at the beginning. It was somehow, amazingly, thanks to SurveyMonkey, we got 356 responses to these 32 questions, and dauntingly, because the software has this other category, which people immediately ran to, not wanting to answer yes, no, or not sure, we have 1,836 comments. You won't hear all of them today. The only question that absolutely all 356 people responded to is, are you an NBCC member? So everyone was able to answer that question. I'm going to just mention a couple of things here. The survey obviously sought clear-cut answers. This other category in particular, the invitation to comments, invited people to immediately go there and talk about the nuances. So probably 1,000 of these 1,800 comments are, it depends. How can you even ask? Or something like that. But we still have some numbers, and I'll try to put some of them out if those issues come up, both from the old survey and the new one. But here are the questions. I'll try and just reel them off real fast. Should a book review editor assign a book to a casual acquaintance of the author, e.g. someone the reviewer may have met at a writing conference, party, or on a panel, but who is not a close friend? Should a book review editor assign a book to a friend of the author? Should a book review editor assign a book on subject A to a reviewer who has also written a book on subject A or a subject extremely close to that? Is it right for book review editors to allow reviewers to request a particular book, even though that practice occasionally leads to back-scratching and attempted setups? Is it the book review editor's obligation to question a prospective reviewer about potential conflicts of interest rather than the reviewers to raise the subject? Is it ethical for a reviewer to decline to review a book he has already accepted for review on the ground that he didn't like the book and doesn't want to say negative things in print? Should anyone mentioned in the acknowledgments of a book be barred from reviewing it? Should authors who publish with a particular house be permitted to review other books published by that house? Should a writer be allowed to review the book of someone who shares the same literary agent? That's a question in which the responses changed enormously from 20 years ago. Should a person who has written an unpaid blurb for a book be allowed to write a fuller review of the book? Should an editor ever assign a book to a reviewer who is known to hold aesthetic, political, or literary views contrary to those of the author? Should an editor ever assign a book to a reviewer who is known to hold aesthetic, political, or literary views similar to the author's? Is it ever ethical to review a book without reading the entire book? That has stayed fairly consistent, although it's a trick question because it says ever. So if you think it ever is okay, then your answer should be yes. But most people actually changed that, and they thought, is it generally ethical to review a book? Anyway, should literary blogs adhere to the same rules of ethics, whatever the consensus may turn out to be on them, as newspaper book review sections? This is the beginning of the new questions. A lot of those questions were on the earlier survey, too. Should literary journals, serious popular magazines, e.g. The Atlantic, and so-called opinion magazines, e.g. The Nation, adhere to the same rules of ethics, whatever the consensus may turn out to be on them, as newspaper book review sections? Should a literary blogger review the book of another literary blogger to whose blog she or he links? I remember I wrote that he or she, so I guess SurveyMonkey is a woman and sort of reverse that. All right. Should freelance book critics request only those books from publishers that they're likely to review or judge for an award, or is it okay for freelancers to request a much larger number of books? I wrote that terrible question, which is a disjunction, which does not allow a yes or no answer, and so a lot of people immediately fled to other. If you think it's okay for freelancers to request more books than they can review or judge, is it okay for them to sell whichever ones they don't want to keep? I don't know if the Strand person is here. I understand they have an anniversary. So we asked that question in honor of the anniversary. Is it okay to assign a book by author A to reviewer B when author A has served as a major source for B in a book that B has already published, known to us as the Woodward on Tenet question? Is it okay for a book review editor in deciding which books to review to favor books by writers who also review regularly for that book section? A nice new question. Should a reviewer read other reviews of a book before reviewing it? Is it okay for a reviewer to regularly review books from the same one or two favorite publishing houses? Is it okay for a reviewer to repeatedly review books by the same author over years and even decades? You may notice the shift from should to is it okay. A lot of people were upset by that. It's really just elegant variation. But there are some issues there. Should a reviewer sometimes be allowed to crib from his or her past reviews in writing about an author years later? We're almost done. Is it ever acceptable for a reviewer not to say what she or he really thinks about a book? Are the ethics of book reviewing in the United States and England significantly different? Now here, I have to say, we're so glad Hitch is here because this was an amazing result, I just have to tell you. Not sure, 73%. So if he has, for having become an American citizen, if you don't know the answer either, we're completely lost. Is it okay, and these are a little technical, is it okay for a book review section to both feature an author through a podcast meant to promote traffic to that book section site and also review the author's book at more or less the same time? Given, some of these questions came from our membership, by the way, and I don't understand them myself. Given that some companies pay per post, blogvertise, review me, pay bloggers for reviews of products and services, should any book reviews commissioned in that way be identified as arising out of commissions? Should a review of a book be linked to its Amazon page or any other site that sells the book? Is a book review that exists exclusively as an MP3 or other type digital audio file less objective than a traditional print review because of its delivery elements, e.g., tone of voice? Is it okay for a